Hello Tigers, Mr. Penn again. Once again I'm back with my fantastic background as I'm sure you can see. And this time I'm going to be reading part of a story to you. So just like yesterday's video, which is all about the news, this is a part of a story that we're going to be reading through. And it's part of our work this week. It's called a part of a story called An Ocean of Fire. Now the title in itself is quite interesting. Try and imagine what an ocean of fire actually looks like. Can we have an ocean of fire? Are oceans and fire a bit of a contrasting idea, of a very different? So even just from the beginning, we've got this idea that comes straight to mind of a lot of fire, a ferocious amount of fire, a fire that seemingly never ends. And that's something to start thinking about before we start reading. Now, An Ocean of Fire is it's not something I'd read before this week. Miss Maddox helped me to plan the lessons for Year Sixes, so this is my first time reading it along with you. So let's see what happens. An Ocean of Fire. Firefighters struggle to control the blaze. There were times that night when the fire almost seemed to become a living thing, full of menace and hate. It turned the firemen's jets of water into scalding rain, set their clothes and boots alight and blinded them with flying embers. Flames flickered and played in the shells of hundreds of burning buildings, sweeping along the narrow lanes and cobbled yards of the old city. Fireman Henry Burrow was lost in the heart of a blaze, trapped in a long burning street. Fires crackled all around him, hissing and roaring, sending out swarms of sparks and clouds of acrid, choking smoke. With buildings collapsing on every side, Burrow staggered over piles of bricks and rubble, trying to shield his eyes from the searing heat. He was searching for a way out. But the fire was after him, outpacing and encircling him like an animal hunting down its prey. Every alleyway and road that might have led Burrow to safety was already blocked or ablaze. The flames were 18 metres, 60 feet high, steadily closing around him, drowning out his hoarse cries for help. Burrow suddenly stumbled and crashed down into the road. He was too exhausted to go on. With the incredible heat burning his lungs and blistering his skin, Burrow lifted his head for a last glance at the fires that were tormenting him. He noticed a flicker of movement, almost hidden by the smoke. Rubbing his eyes, he saw the hazy figure of a small boy standing in a doorway. It was his 3-year-old son, waving to him. Burrow smiled to himself. He'd heard tales of firemen seeing strange things in the swirling confusion of a blaze, but he could think of nothing better than a last chance to say goodbye to his boy, even if the figure was only a trick of his imagination. Burrow looked again. This time, he noticed his son gesturing, pointing into the doorway where he was standing. He wanted his father to come in. Burrow dragged himself up and made his way over. As he got closer, his son faded into the smoke of the red glow of the fires, but Burrow could see a stairway opening up beyond the doorway. He climbed down the stairs and found himself in a deep cellar, a cool, quiet room. Safe from the inferno raging above ground, he huddled in a corner and closed his eyes to sleep. Henry Burrow had been caught in one of the worst fires ever to strike central London. It was started at 6 o'clock on the evening of December 29th, 1940, by thousands of German incendiary bombs clattering across the rooftops of the city. The raid itself wasn't particularly heavy for a blitz. 136 bombers joined the attack, compared to 350 on Black Saturday, and because of the thick fog that was settling around their landing strips in France, the Luftwaffe were under some pressure to finish their mission early. So it only lasted for around 3 hours, compared to the 11 hours of the horror that Coventry had suffered 6 weeks earlier. But a number of things combined to fan the blaze into an ocean of fire, destroying a great swathe of London's famous financial district and killing 170 people, including 16 firemen. Since the start of the Blitz, Londoners had always suspected that the Luftwaffe liked to give the city a good pastings on Sundays, the day when most offices, schools and public buildings were locked and empty. Without any fire watchers on duty, caretakers or voluntary staff who watched for incendiary bombs, the city was more vulnerable over the weekend. Blitz Londoners were getting quite casual about extinguishing incendiaries. These hissing canisters of inflammable chemicals were almost harmless if caught early, but with nobody to stamp them out or report them, they quickly took hold in attics and lofts, spreading their fires into surrounding buildings. It wasn't until January 1941 that the government made it compulsory for firms and offices to employ full-time fire watchers. Over 9,000 firemen turned out to battle the blaze, moving across acres of burning streets in small teams of 3 or 4. They had 2,000 water pumps at their disposal, but many were useless, as German high-explosive bombs had ruptured sections of the capital's water supply at the start of the attack. The firemen had faced this problem before, and had come up with the idea of building dozens of huge canvas water tanks around the city. Once these were drained, the teams turned to the Thames for their water. But when they ran their emergency hoses down into the river on December 29th, they were in for a shock. There was a strong tide out to sea that evening, and all that was left of the river was a shallow channel of icy water. Fire teams were forced to wade through thick mud, and in many places they couldn't reach the water. They did the best they could to get their hoses to shore, but there weren't enough fireboats to make up for the shortage. In desperation, fire teams ran their hoses into flooded bomb craters and ponds. But it was the street layout of the old financial district that caused the biggest headache for the fire teams. The area was famous for its narrow, twisting passageways and crowded offices. Firemen had to track their way through a hellish maze of blazing alleyways, walled with tenement buildings 4 floors high. The fires howled through these streets, raising the air temperature until hose water turned to steam, and buildings became so hot they could spontaneously burst into flames. This was the scene that confronted Henry Burrough when he first reported for duty at a central fire station near St Paul's Cathedral. Now, that's the first 2 or 3 pages of the book, An Ocean of Fire. This week you're going to be doing some more work all around this book, so you'll be given different sections on different days, and similar to this week with last week with Escarfa Kiko, you're going to be choosing sections and answering questions or looking at characters' emotions, describing the scenes that people are seeing. When you're doing this work, think carefully about how you are describing things. The author could very easily have chose to say that there is a lot of fire, that there is a lot of smoke, but instead they used really interesting similes and metaphors to get their ideas across. This idea of an ocean of fire makes it sound like it's never ending, like it's going to swarm you, swamp you, flood over you. That's not something we really use to describe fire, but it's a really powerful metaphor. You could try coming up with your own metaphors. Say that it's a wall of fire, or that the fire was as ferocious as something, and turn it into a simile. It's completely up to you how you take the descriptive side of this, but try and get across the emotions that Henry Burrough might be feeling. Try and get across the fear and the suspense that the author's trying to get across in their writing. Because if you read through this, it is quite scary at times. There are parts that seem a little bit sort of suspenseful and suspicious, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen next. And that's what makes it such an interesting piece of text to read. Now, as always, if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts about the text, please email me about them, because anything you share with me, I'll happily share with the rest of the class if you want to, or we can just have a conversation about it ourselves. I'll post another video tomorrow to both the YouTube channel and to this Google Drive, so you'll be able to see the work there as well. But for now, it's been really lovely talking to you. Speak to you soon. Bye.